In today's show, we're going to talk about PowerApps UpdateIf. And what we're going to do is we're going to cover the function, how to use it, when to use it. We're also going to talk a little bit about the fact that it's not delegable. And so we'll talk about what that means and where that fits in the equation. And then maybe some replacement ideas. We're probably also going to pull in Monitor. I wanted to use Monitor to show you a little bit about the performance of UpdateIf because I learned a couple things over the last few days. Should be interesting. Should be fun. But first, here's our intro. Hi, my name is Shane Young with PowerApps 911. Those guys. And today, we're going to talk about UpdateIf. And so the idea of UpdateIf is it is a function that you can use to update multiple records in a table. And the idea is the if portion is you set the condition. So imagine like if you were saying, I wanted to patch and filter, right? That's the idea. So filter the data down to this subset and then patch a bunch of records. And so where we use this a lot is in cases where we're trying to update statuses. So for example, say I had an approval form and I had like 20 approvers and one person rejects it. And now I need to go update all the other pending people. So I have to go say, hey, update if the parent ID is the ID of the record and the current status is pending, set them all to skipped because that one person rejected, right? So that's a lot of times where I use this logic is where I want to ultimately update, very hard for me to say. I want to update a bunch of records based on a given criteria where I'm doing some type of relational data model, right? So that's typically what happens. Anyway, so we're going to do that. We're going to use Monitor to talk about the performance ramifications of UpdateIf. And we're also going to talk about the fact that UpdateIf is not delegable, even though PowerApps doesn't warn you. And I think this is something that tripped up me recently in one of my apps because I wasn't thinking about it. So I want to call that out for you guys. All right, whatever, it's enough blah, blah, blah. Let's go to my desktop and actually build something. Okay, so to use UpdateIf, we're gonna need a data source. And so I guess we should pull in one of those real quick. And so I already had one in here. We'll talk about that one in a second. So instead I'm gonna go right here. I'm gonna search for the good old SharePoint connector. There you go, be on the keyboard for a second, it shows up. We're gonna choose a SharePoint connection. And so then now to start with, we're just gonna use the good old employees list. Where's employees? Right there. So that adds my data source. And so then now we'll just throw a gallery in here. So insert, and my galleries are way over here for some dumb reason. There you go. And add employees. Ta-da! And so right here, we'll just do the old first name and last name. Something like that formula. And so then right here, we'll go ahead and we'll set their department. So there we go. So we got the data pulled in, nothing shocking there. So the idea of UpdateIf is if I want to update several of these records. So say that like we wanted to update all of the people with the last name of Taylor to be in the, they're already in the janitorial, bummer. How about in the waste department? So what we could do, if we throw a button on the screen right here, we'll get this out of the way. Get this out of the way. Oh yeah, much bigger. Look at all that room. And so what we're going to do is we're going to say UpdateIf. And then what data source we want to update. So I want to update employees. Now notice it says collection up there because it can do any table. So it could be a collection, but we're going to use the actual SharePoint list. So then this is the condition. So think of this as the same as your filter statement, right? So in this case, we're just going to say something like last name equals Taylor. Like so. And then finally, it's like, all right, now that you've done this, now you're going to write this like in patch syntax. So you're going to do the curly brackets and you're going to say set department, there it is, equals to, I forget, I think I said waste. So we'll make it waste. So like that and like that. So that's what an UpdateIf formula looks like. And so if we press this, then we should see that it goes off. Jeff Taylor is waste. And if we find Ferguson Taylor, he is also waste. So there you go. So at its highest form, there you go. That's how UpdateIf works. Video over. No, just kidding. So the biggest thing I need you to know right now, right, other than that you have a function, is that this function is not delegable. But Shane, I don't see the yellow triangle. I don't see the blue underline. I know, I'm sorry, not my job to put it there. But even though they don't show it to you, this particular function is not delegable. Now, if you don't know what delegation is, go watch the delegation video because you shouldn't be building Power Apps if you don't. That's mean. You should learn it though. But the idea of delegation here is that that means instead of it going and saying, hey, data source, do all this work, updating the data, which I always kind of thought it did, it doesn't. Instead, what happens is it downloads the first 500 records by default from your data source. And then it says, okay, now find, out of those first 500 records, find all the matches for Taylor and then update them. So that's kind of a big deal if you have a larger data source. And this is what got me in trouble with one of my customer apps just last week, is why we're making this video, is I had went through the scenario and I had this update if in their approval scenario running against a data source. And I thought, oh, no big deal. They'll never have more than 2,000 approvals. And so I'd set the delegation limit to 2,000. Well, they got more than 2,000 pending approvals. Guess what happened? You know. We ended up not updating anything past 2000. They were very mad. They weren't mad. They were nice about it. But I had to fix it. So this is not delegable. So that is the biggest warning to you all. Okay? The second thing I want you to know about this function is that it actually doesn't just update them in one fell swoop. I don't know why, but in my tiny little brain, I always thought that it would just do this all at once. So I thought, man, this is a much more efficient way of doing it. Because what's another way we could do this exact same formula, right? Let's write that real quick. So we're gonna go down here, and if I click in there, we'll just call this ForAll way. And then we'll call this one UpdateIf. I don't know why I'm labeling these, but I feel like they should be labeled, so I'm labeling the buttons. So this another way you can do this exact same thing is you could say ForAll filter employees, where last name, remember I told you it's going to look very similar, equals Taylor. So remember, ForAll says go get all of those records that match that criteria, and that is delegable. Great. And so then after we get all those back, and what we're going to do is we're going to say as our data, I don't know, making up stuff. We're going to say we want to do a patch. And so what do you want to patch? I want to patch my good friend employees. What record do I want to patch? I want to patch our data. And what field do I want to set? I want to set department equal to, we're going to say waste 2. Doom, doom. So that finishes the patch. That finishes the ForAll. And now PowerApps is mad at me. What are you mad about, PowerApps? Oh. So this is telling me that, hey, I'm changing the data source. I can't do it against the same data source. So this is one of the downsides of UpdateIf, right? It can't update the data that it's actually affecting. So what I would have to do instead is put this data into a collection and then have the ForAll go through the collection, right? So control copy, home. And so we'd say clear collect, coal records. I don't know, very, very fancy. And so then now we go down here and say, hey, instead of the ForAll, we could say coal records. There you go. So get all the records that match our filter criteria, right? Which we know is 2, Jeff and Ferguson. And then for all those records, patch employees, our data. This is just a way inside of ForAll to recognize that data and then set them to department 2. And so if we press this button, we should be able to see that Jeff Taylor is waste 2, Ferguson is waste 2. No one else works in the waste department. Perfect, okay? So this and this do the exact same thing. So I wanted you to understand that. Now what's interesting about though, remember as I told you, this one's not delegable. Everything that we just did right here is delegable. So this could be a good reason to say, you know what? If I'm going to run into delegation issues, I'm not going to use it. I'm going to instead ForAll. And this is what I ended up doing last week to fix the app that I'd broken, was I just replaced all my UpdateIfs with ForAlls like in this manner. Okay, so hopefully that helps you understand. So the last little, well, no, there's 2 more pieces at least. So where I was really headed with this, sometimes I confuse even myself, is I wanted to show you what really happens here. So one of the neat things that you have probably not used much of, because I haven't done a video on it, is if you go over here to the toolbar, there is monitor. And so if we open up the monitor, this is going to allow us to see what's really happening. So if we go back over here, you have to put the app in a play mode to take advantage of it. We say play. So now if we do an update if, our data is going to process. And if we switch over to monitor, we can see that the user action was select, right? So they clicked on the button. And the first thing it did was it got rows, or get rows, got rows, whatever. English is not my forte. So it shows you the formula that it used, and it shows you actually the data that came back. And so in this case, you can see that, came back was the Taylor matches, right? So Jeff and Ferguson, right? That data is in here, but then you're like, wait a minute. No, it's not. So what do you actually see here? Remember, what did I tell you? That it doesn't go and get the records that meet your criteria. Remember, UpdateIf is not delegable. So it didn't just go get Jeff and Ferguson. Instead, if you look slowly, I'm going to try and find it before I slow down. So here, it started getting records. Look, it got Nicola's record, right? And it got Greg's record. And then I think my record's next. There's me. Fourth record is Chewy. It's really sad. I know the IDs of all these people, but I use this data a lot. So it got back all of the record. All the records, not the records that matched, all the records up to the delegation limit, which is currently in our app. If we go look, file, settings, this weird new interface, and we go here, it is, geez, oh Pete, it was right here. So I currently have it set to 50. So it got back the first 50 records that match. By default in your apps, it would say 500 if you haven't changed it. Okay. So it got all the records, and then locally it did the data. So we can kind of use monitor to see what happened here. Requested 50 rows. Oh, received 15. Why did it only receive 15? Because my data source only has 15. Oh, so don't let that confuse you. But do you see the beauty of monitor? We can actually see what's happening. So it got those, then it patched rows. So it patched, so if we look hard enough, it patched Jeff, or we call him Scuba's record right there. And it set the department, or it was waste, and it set it to waste 2, right? That's all in here. If you look then here, we also patched, and then who did we patch? We patched Ferguson, right? The other Taylor. So it patched both of those, and then it fetched some data. Right, so this is it getting all the records again. Yep. And then there's it saying requested 100, received 15. So this is the gallery. So the gallery was updating. So that's what this get rows is. So if you didn't have a gallery, you wouldn't have seen this. And then it pulled in the pictures. So anyway, monitor is really interesting because it shows you what's happening. But what I want you to take away from this is UpdateIf caused all the data to be retrieved, right? So in our case, all 15 records. But if we were to use this other data source over here I have called Giant that has 500 records, right? It would get all the data. It would have got all 500 records and then would have processed them. And then, right, so that's one. So UpdateIf made one call to download all the records. Then it made one call for each record it had to update. So we had to update 2. So Ferguson and Jeff. So we made 2 more calls. So if your UpdateIf said update 1,000 records, well, I could do 1,000. Whatever. It would then make 1,000 calls to SQL. What? Or to SharePoint or whatever your data source is. So UpdateIf generates a lot of traffic. A lot of noise, right? A lot got downloaded, a lot got processed. And we can better see that. So I told you Giant has like 2,700 rows. So if we throw a button right here, and let's do another one of my little tricks for testing. So we're going to say UpdateIf Giant. So this second condition here, it just has to meet the criteria. What does that mean? It just has to return true or false. So in our case, we're saying last name equals Taylor. So the 2 records that was true for, they were the ones we were filtering down. If you want to literally update all the records, you can just use true. This is one of Shane's little personal hacks for fixing things. UpdateIf true, that means update all the records you can get your grubby little paws on. And then what am I going to do? I'm going to set the color column to be the word aqua. Okay, so like that and like that. Now, we notice over here, I'm actually going to set this back. I don't want to update all of them. I don't want to sit here and wait on all of them to process. So we're going to go over here. I'm going to change this. I'm going to say, hey, just get 20 records. Okay. So set that at 20. After you change the delegation limit, sometimes you have to refresh. So you might have to go here to Giant and just say refresh. So that way it knows it's only using 20. But there you go. So this should update the first 20 records to Aqua. And if we open the list, you know this trick too, right? Edit data, take you straight to your SharePoint list. So right now they're all yellow because I was practicing. I know it doesn't seem like I practice, but sometimes I do. So here you go. So if you didn't know about the delegation thing, you'd expect this to update 2,700 records. It's not. It's going to update 20. So we're going to clear all this data. Perfect. We'll go back over here. We'll hit play. And now we'll press this button. And while that button processes, you could actually see the data going. And so you can see that it's processing, it's chugging. And so it looks like it took 26 actions. Don't think of this as necessarily calls, but 26 actions to update the data. If we go over here, you're going to see that record 1 to record 20 is Aqua, starting at record 21 because it wasn't delegable. It only processed the first 20 are yellow. And so if you look back over here, you could actually see this get rows, and it's the same type of deal. So you would, if you scrolled through, you would see record 1 to record 20. It did its thing. Here's the row count, requested 20, received 20. So that is telling you that happy. And then there is a patch. So we're running the patch statement 20 times. So just keep that in mind. It does cause a lot of bandwidth to be consumed. Now, if you're thinking a minute ago, I showed you this ForAll video or this ForAll one, right? And so in this particular case, you know, would this be any more efficient? Not really, right? Because in this case, we would have to make one call to get the filtered data set, but it would be the filtered data set and it would be delegable. And then we would then say patch. So we would do the patch the 20 times. So the ForAll method allows you to do delegation, but it doesn't allow you to do, it isn't any more efficient. Okay. So hopefully that's helping. All right. The last little thing I want to remind you guys with UpdateIf, because sometimes we don't ever think about this, and we should, I'm guilty of this as well. UpdateIf returns a table of the records that it modified. So if we were to do this and say clear collect Cole Taylors, like this will process from the outside in, right? So it'll go get the employees, it'll get the one's last name Taylor, it'll set their department to, let's set it back to janitorial, and then it will save the records that it updated into a collection. So we can just hit that real quick. Well, let's go over here and clear data in case we want to see anything. I don't think we do, but just in case. But so that should update Jeff and Ferguson to janitorial. But more importantly, we now have those records. And now, wait a minute. So what happened here? It didn't return just the 2 records that it did. What did it actually return? It returned the, we're up to the delegation limit. So it returned all 15 records. So it's saying, hey, I'm going to get all the data. Now, if we look at the data, we should see though, where is Jeff? Right there. So there's Jeff and Taylor, and where does his department? Does anybody know where the department column is hiding itself? Right, oh, it's right there. There you go. So he's a janitorial, and then there's Ferguson. So it's the updated data, but interestingly enough, UpdateIf doesn't return just the collection of the 2 records that it modified, it returns all of them. So the more that I've messed with UpdateIf over the last few days, I've been kind of diving in here. It's a peculiar little function. I used it more than, I used it quite a bit in the past, but honestly now I'm just starting to see that it does a lot of things that are just slightly different than I'd expect. All right, so hopefully to that end, that gives you an idea how this function works, gives you an introduction to Monitor. I'm guessing you all are going to leave me comments below that say, hey, we want to see a whole video on Monitor. Go ahead, leave those comments, push me along. At some point, I'll do a whole video on Monitor. It's an interesting tool. It gives you a lot of insight of what's going on. And even if you're not a super nerd like this guy, you can still kind of fake your way through it enough to get an idea of like, how this function works. I could see all the extra network calls that it's making. I can see that it's not delegable, even though Microsoft forgot there should be a blue squiggly line right here, Microsoft. There should be a yellow triangle right here. Cool. All right, well, that's everything I've got for today. Hopefully you enjoyed this. Yeah, if you have any thoughts, questions, comments, leave them below. As always, you can always go out to training.powerapps911.com. You can watch this video, download the apps, all that, right? We have a lot of different subscription options out there for everything from full formal training classes to quick and easy, just, getting the different resources. We have office hours where we get to hang out, do cool stuff together, whatever, blah, blah, blah. With all that, I'm going to say thanks and have a great day. Before you go, be sure to click on the subscribe button over here so that way you'll be notified when new videos come out. If you need any help or you want to work together, whether your problem's big or small, check us out at PowerApps 911. We do it all. I rhymed. Or if you're looking for more formal training offerings, we have those linked up here somewhere. So check them out. Thanks and have a great day.